and said, I've got a big announcement for you. You've got the team, and everybody's celebrating and opening champagne and whatever.
Yeah.
And Jeff came over to me and he said, mate, I've got to have a talk to you. I said, okay. And Jeff said, mate, I don't have any money.
Oh, no.
We're only half an hour after promising the VFL we had $12 million, and yes, we give them $2 million, I think it was, by Friday.
G'day, it's Lindsay Waddington, and today we're going to do a podcast with a bloke that I've met in later life, but I tell you what, it's unfair. This bloke has so many talents and he's achieved so much. Would you welcome today Mr. Bob Pritchard? How you going, Bob?
Thanks, mate. I'm great.
Yeah. You
Couldn't
ready
be
for a
better.
bit of a yak? Yeah.
Talk under wet cement.
Mate, I've got to tell you, this is going to be a journey for some people because world-winning author, you've been on TV, you've been on radio, you've owned bloody football clubs, you've one of the greatest marketing men we've ever had. You rub shoulders with the biggest names. But, mate, where did it all start for you?
My father was in the Australian Opera.
Yep.
And
And where were you born there too, mate?
I was born in Melbourne,
Yeah.
in Richmond.
Yeah.
8 of us lived in one room.
No.
We used to take turns in sleeping because we couldn't all sleep at the same time. They were the good old days. Whatever happened to them?
Is that a joke?
That's serious.
Oh.
And so my father died when I was young. My mother was had a lot of health problems, and I had a sister who was an invalid from birth.
Mm.
So we had a pretty tough time. And Richmond in those days was a bloodhouse. You know, it was the Richmond boys against the Fitzroy boys against the Collingwood boys, and it was all that.
Mm.
And Mum used to drive me around when I was about 13 or 14. She used to drive me around all the clubs in Melbourne because there was hundreds of them.
Mhm.
You know, Preston Town Hall, Collingwood Town Hall, all had dancers. So I used to go around and beg to get a job. You know, could I get on stage for one song? No, piss off, go away. Or, yeah, get up and do one song, and if you're no good, you'll be out of here in 10 seconds, you know,
Yeah.
all that. And I picked up a few gigs along the way making, you know, $5 a go or $3 a go or something. And then my luck changed. I'm walking down Swanson Street in Melbourne one day, and this guy comes up to me and he says, would you like to be on television? And I said, yeah, of course I would. And he said, well, come along to Channel O, gave me his card, come along to Channel O on Saturday and we'll have a look at you. So I went out to Channel O. Well, first of all, I went home and told my mother, and I said, look, I met this guy on the street and he asked me to come out, and she said, you're not going.
Oh.
Nobody comes up to you in the street. He's a pedophile. You know, you're not going. Anyway, so of course I pleaded with her and begged her because I thought I'm going to be the next Graham Kennedy or something. And so she agreed reluctantly to drive me out to Channel O. So we went out to Channel O, and 2 weeks later, I'm on television 6 nights a week on Commotion. And there was only 2 of us on Commotion that actually, because it was a mime show, there was only 2 of us on Commotion that actually did a lot of our own songs. So I'd recorded a few things. And so I was actually promoting my own songs as well as doing other songs. And, you know, that went really, really well. So instead of going and begging these guys for a job, all of a sudden they start offering me work so it took off. So then I got modelling jobs, and then Loretta Crawford hired me for Homicide. So I went on to Homicide.
Now, Homicide, don't just gloss over that. That was one of our big shows.
It was one of our big shows.
It's one of Australia's big shows.
It was one of Australia's big shows. And I had never acted before, so
Yeah.
I went to the reading, and I must have been dreadful because at the end of the day, Leonard Teal, who was the star of the show,
Mm.
said to me, why don't you come home? Is this your first time? And I said, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. So he said, come home with me. And my wife, who at the time was a star, will cook you dinner and I'll just go through your lines with you. So we sat at Leonard's place and went through all the lines, and he told me how to gesture and how to move and whatever. So I went in the next day and we filmed it. And it must have gone all right because I got invited back. And then I got, I can't remember what was next, but Division 4 or...
Well, that's another massive show.
So I did 4 or 5 of those.
Oh, wow.
And then I did things like Shifting Heart on the ABC. And so it just sort of fell into all this. And in the meanwhile, I'm doing modelling and I'm doing fashion parades and I'm hosting things. So even though I think my salary from Channel O for 6 shows was about $35 or something, bearing in mind it was the early 60s, but I was making $200 or $300 a week.
Yeah, wow.
And I was 18. I've got a new convertible. I'm pretty cool, mate.
Yeah. Do you reckon though, Bob? Do you reckon the drive to do well was because you probably felt a bit of responsibility with your old man passing away early and mum and all that, or no? It was just you, like you said, it was just luck. You fell into it.
Oh, I fell into it, but I wanted to get the fuck out of Richmond. I mean, it was a shithole, seriously. And ever since I could remember, I wanted to get out. Where my brother, he was quite happy. So he just drifted along and he ended up working in a bank or something. But I would have done anything to get out of Richmond. I mean, it was a hellhole in those days. And it worked out. It worked out really well. And then I started doing shows, putting money into shows, little money I had, but nothing cost that much in those days. And then I was going up to, I was in the Cross and I went up to Lay Girls, I was watching Lay Girls, and I went to Carlotta afterwards and I said to her, this is the wrong audience because the only people that are coming to the Cross are people in the Cross. And they're all the derelicts and druggies and all that. They're the only people that go to Lay Girls. Your audience is out in the western suburbs. They're the people that are interested in transvestites and, sex change and all that. They're the ones that are really intrigued by that. So I said to her, look, how about I put you on at the Opera House? And she said, that's ridiculous. Nobody's ever going to come. So I stuck her on at the Opera House. Tickets sold like that. I mean, and I had a good markup on them, did really well. And Carlotta and I are still great friends 60 years later.
Isn't that incredible? And
she gives me credit every time we're somewhere and she introduces me. She says, this is the guy that made me. If it hadn't have been for Bob, I wouldn't have made it.
Otherwise could have been still at the Cross just doing the same old thing. Now, we shouldn't gloss over that because you're just saying this like it's the local bloody milk bar down the corner. But for the people that follow us all around the world, the Sydney Opera House is probably one of our holy grail entertainment areas too, isn't it?
It is.
I've been lucky to play in there maybe half a dozen times in country bands and that. You look around and you go, this
beautiful
is
room.
Yeah, it is so
beautiful
good.
Room.
Is that where the marketing started then, Bob? You could always see talent in somebody and you're like, I can make money for them, but then you do too?
I don't know. I just sort of looked for opportunities. I was at Marrickville RSL or somewhere and I saw this guy singing and I thought, this guy's in the wrong place, and it was a guy named Kamal. And he was just out there singing in this local RSL to nobody and nobody gave a fuck. Yeah. And I said to him, I want to put you on at the Opera House because I'd got a real thing for the Opera House by then. This is really cool. And he said, okay. We ended up doing 14 shows. I mean, he couldn't get 50 people in an RSL, but we sold 16, 17, 18,000 tickets or something at the Opera House. Wrong audience. This is what happened with Russell. Russell was singing in clubs, wrong audience. They put him in, he put himself in through all the big stadiums across Australia.
Oh, packed him out.
Sold out everywhere.
And he deserves to be there too. He's one of our beautiful vocalists.
Mate, he is a
world-class. Incredible.
Not only is he a world-class vocalist, he's a world-class guy.
He's a good bloke.
He is a gem.
He really is. He came from Richmond too, didn't he?
I'm not sure. No, he came from around that area. We're all from... The whole lot of us were from Melbourne. Yeah. Everybody came from Melbourne in those days. Yeah. And everybody came from that inner city area.
Yeah.
It was just a...
it's incredible, though, when you say that, Bob. Like, you've come out of that, but you've come out of that era where there's like Normie Rowe, like Russell Morris, Brian Cadden. You're all still mates today, which is quite an incredible thing because...
Yeah, we've all been friends for 60 years.
But all superstars in your own rights. And I think that's so wonderful. It's you have a luncheon go set, which Brian started, you said.
Yep.
But you sort of have a lot to
I
do with the running.
inherited it.
You inherited it. But what a wonderful day. I've been lucky to be up there once. You had Alan Caswell up there, another legend.
Yep.
I think it's just so good to see all these bloody Australian megastars, because you got to understand, I'm a young country kid from Proserpine, like cane farmer's son. So I get asked about producing albums for Brian or having all these people in my life. They go, it must be a dream come true. And I'm like, mate, if you knew where I come from, you couldn't have dreamt this shit. You know what I mean? But was it like that for you? Because you've spent your whole life with these people.
It's like imposter syndrome, you know. It's true, because I've often, you know, I remember I was doing the commercial management for a guy named Evander Holyfield, who was world boxing champion. And I was in the ring with Evander and a whole bunch of superstar actors when he won the world title.
Wow.
And I rang my mother. I'd had quite a few drinks, but I rang my mother and I was crying. I'm sitting in the ring and I'm crying, and there's Clint Eastwood and all of them all celebrating. And I'm sitting in the corner going, I can't believe this guy from Richmond.
Yeah, I get it.
Sitting here with the world champion.
Yeah.
You go, and you, shish, how did that happen?
Yeah. And so you worked with him. So we know you spent time in America.
I've spent nearly 40 years in America. I bought...
Backwards and forwards, Bob, or no you were there?
Pretty much full time. I ended up doing, I think, 54 shows at the Sydney Opera House, and I started the Australian Pops Orchestra. Why? I have no idea. It was a bottomless bucket in which to throw money. Just the charts alone for 70-something pieces back in those days.
Yeah.
It's different now.
Yeah.
But in those days, just the charts alone for 50 songs or 30 songs or whatever it was. I can't remember what it was, but it was enough to take all the money I had. And I got a call from the Packer organisation saying that there's this new sport, World Series Cricket. So I got involved with World Series Cricket, the first job I'd ever really had working for somebody. So I was working for Kerry. And
what was that like, mate?
It was interesting.
They reckon he was pretty fair.
Me a huge...
Was he intimidating?
Oh, if you see the size of him, I mean, you're a big boy. He's twice your size.
Yeah.
It's monstrous and aggressive.
Oh, yeah.
You know, very aggressive. But I learnt a huge amount, you know, and I think the difference in Australia compared with what I found with America is that here I was marketing director for PBL. That's the fence sign's down over there, go and put it up. So 1 minute you're working with Channel 9 on the television broadcast, the next minute you're sticking a sign up on something. Because you've got to be jack of all trades here. There's not the specialisation. So, you know, World Series Cricket was great because I flew around the world and went to cricket matches in 7 countries or 9 countries, whatever there was, 7, I think. And
just quickly, was that a hard thing to sell? Like, did it cotton on real quick, or you just had to work your ass off?
It was hard initially because we were in a war with the cricket organisations from each country, and we were in the High Court in London for years. And, you know, we were playing at Waverley Park, where they were playing at the MCG.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so we had some challenges, but we overcame them. We ended up, it was the biggest sport.
Well, it is what
one
it is
of the biggest
today.
sports in the world.
Yeah.
And then of course, I got involved. I was marketing director for Formula One for PBL, and Formula One was fantastic. And that, again, got me more travel. And so by the time that had all happened, I'd been lots of places. So I had a pretty good idea of how the world worked. And then Kerry sent me to Canada because a guy named Philip Adams, who used to write for the newspapers, he came up with the idea of a 3D camera. And Kerry had great visions of the news being in 3D.
Yeah.
You know, you could really see it and feel it and belong in it. And so he sent me to Canada, and I worked with Michael Cole, who was the head of Concert Productions International, and they had all the big tours. They had the Queen, not Queen, the Queen.
Oh, wow.
They had the Pope, the Pope, and they had all the big tours, the Stones, they had everybody. And Michael then went on to be the head of Live Nation.
Mm.
And so I worked with them on trying to develop this camera and proving that it worked, which it didn't. It worked kind of, but not good enough for television. And while I was there for quite a few months. I was working with the Ballads, and the Ballads owned all the sports teams up there. You know, they owned the Blue Jays and all of that. So we were sitting around having a few beers one night, and we talked about how does sport work in Australia? How does football work in Australia? And I said, well, it's a membership thing.
Mm.
And they said, membership will never work. You can never generate enough money to run a football team and grow it with memberships. You've got to have private ownership. You've got to have somebody to stick a lot of money in it.
And get it going straight away.
So we wrote up a proposal, and it was about 100 pages or something. I mean, it was a pretty serious proposal. And I took it back to Kerry. And I said, Kerry, we can own a football team or a baseball team or a basketball team or some team.
Mm.
It was not designed for any particular team. And Kerry said, well, I'm not interested, you know, because we've got so much power and we've got the network, so I pretty much run the sports anyway, so I'm not interested in owning a team. And so I sort of put it aside, and I'm down at the Orient Hotel about 2 o'clock in the morning or 1 o'clock in the morning or something, having a few beers, sitting at the bar. I'm sitting next to this guy, and I introduced myself, and he introduced himself. And I said, what do you do? And he said, I'm the CEO of the Sydney Swans. And I said, oh, really? He said, yeah. And I said, oh, it's great. My dad used to play for Melbourne. And he said, oh, that's interesting. But we're closing at the end of the year because the teams in Melbourne don't want to support us anymore. So there will be no Sydney Swans at the end of the year. And I said, would they be interested in selling the team? And he said, I don't know. I'll introduce you to Jack Hamilton in Melbourne.
Yeah.
So I flew down to Melbourne and met with Jack Hamilton and said, you know, we'd like to buy the Sydney Swans. He said, okay, if you can come up with the money, you can have them. So I said, how much money? And he said, you probably need 10 or 12 million. Well, I was only about 12 million short. And so I thought, oh, okay, shit. So then I'm walking through the Hilton Hotel with Jim Mackay, who was the marketing director of VFL in those days. And this guy says, hello, who was Jeff Edelston. And I'd never met the guy before. Anyway, he calls us over. Then he asked me, he said, you're the bloke from World Series cricket and whatever. And I said, yeah. And he said, what are you doing now? You know. And I said, well, trying to buy a football team. He said, how much do you need? I said, 10 to 12 million. And he said, I'll give it to you.
Just like that.
Just like that. And I said, fantastic.
Because you had the marks on the board with the cricket and everything? Yep.
So he said, okay. And so we did a bit of work on it, developed it. And I went back to Kerry and I said, look, I'm leaving. And they said, well, we don't want you to go. So Friday we'll have lunch at Beppy's, which is just around the corner from PBL, and we'll talk about it and you can make your final decision. But bear in mind, if you leave us, you'll never work in this country again, which is an incentive.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I went, by the time I walked from Beppy's back to PBL on Park Street, all my stuff was on the footpath out the front. They'd taken everything out of my office and dumped it on the footpath. I couldn't get in the building, nothing.
Oh, wow.
So now I'm sort of stuck. And we then fought a campaign to get the Swans because some other people stepped in and tried to get it. Edgeley and a few others came in and wanted to put in bids. And we ended up getting it. And we had a big night out at Jeff's in Dural. And we had all the press there and we had all the players there and we had business people there and we had a whole bunch of people there. Jack Hamilton rang at 7 o'clock and said, I've got a big announcement for you. You've got the team. And everybody's celebrating and opening champagne and whatever.
Yeah.
And Jeff came over to me and he said, mate, I've got to have a talk to you. I said, okay. So we go and sit on Jeff's bed. And Jeff said, mate, I don't have any money.
Oh, no.
We're only half an hour after promising the VFL we had $12 million, and yes, we give him $2 million, I think it was, by Friday.
Oh, bugger.
So Jeff said to me, I suggest that you get on the phone and you call everybody you know from PBL, had a lot of contacts, call everybody you know and raise the money.
Wow.
So I started on the phone. Craig Kimball, who was the first person I rang, he owned Just Jeans, good mate. And he said, I'm not going to stick any money into a bloody football team. How am I going to make any money out of a football team? So, okay, fair enough. So I spent a couple of days on the phone and I'd exhausted everybody that had that sort of money. And Alan Bond was a friend. So I rang and he'd just put a whole bunch of money into Richmond.
Oh, wow.
So I rang Alan Bond and I said, mate, I'm in a real jam here. One, I'm unemployed. Two, I've promised the VFL $2 million by Friday, or whatever the number was. And then I've got to find the rest of the money to be able to run the team and pay the bills and do the rest of it. And he said, well, I've just put all my money into Richmond, but I'll see what I can do. So bugger me dead. He rings the next morning and he says, mate, I've got your money.
Oh, Bondi did. Wow.
And he said, I've got a friend here, Rob Nikovich, who runs a company called Westech, and he's prepared to give you the money. Thank you.
Wow.
And so Nikovich flies over and he said, okay, what's the deal? And I said, well, I came up with the idea. I put the plan together and so I got 25% of the team and Edelston was putting in the money and he was getting 75%. So he said, okay, first thing to do is have a meeting with Edelston. So we have a meeting and he says to Jeff, 75% putting in the money, you got no money, your 75% is now 5%.
Yeah, okay.
But you have to stay with the team. You have to pretend to be the owner because we hadn't even closed on it yet. So if we went back to the VFL and said, look, we don't have the money, we're going to change horses, they would have said, forget it.
Sketchy, yeah.
So, and I kept my share. Then Nikovich said, okay, what's your deal? Oh, what I didn't mention was that when Jeff said he'd pay for, he had the money to the team, he said, look, what do you need? And I said, well, I need a new car and I need, I want 3 months travel to look at other sports around the world. And Jeff said, okay, no problem. So then he calls me and he says, if you go up to Sanderson's, there's a brand new Mercedes convertible sitting there with your name on it. I've paid for it. It's yours. So I went up to Sanderson, picked up this new Mercedes Benz, and I still haven't got a team and still haven't got a job. Right?
But you got a new car.
Oh God! But I had a good car. And anyway, so Nikovich said, "What do you want? What's your deal? You keep your shares, but what else do you want?" And I was in partnership with Harry Miller in a company called Pritchard Miller Productions, and which was apart from PBL. We just did stuff on the side. And Harry said, well, I'll go and negotiate it for you. So I said, okay. And Harry said, well, what do you want me to ask for? And he said, what are you getting at PBL? And I said, I don't know, 150 or something. This is in, 84, whatever. I said, I think I'm getting 150 or 170 or something. And he said, okay, what else do you want? And I said, I want health and I want to be able to travel around the world and go and see other sports. And he said, okay. So off he goes and meets with Westech. And he comes back and he said, is 150 what you want? And I said, yeah, 150 sounds good. And he said, well, I've got 600. How's that?
Holy shit.
It's 1985, 4, again, 600.
And car and everything?
1,000 and car. And
wow.
So I was the CEO of Power Play and we bought the West Stars, which became the Sydney Kings.
Yeah.
And we bought Sports Play Television. We set up Sports Play Television. So there was the three of us in television, in cable television, there was Holmes of Court, Bondi, and myself.
Geez, you dealt with all the big names, mate. Bloody hell.
I just stumbled into all these things. There wasn't a great plan that I wrote out when I was 15 or anything.
How long were you with the Swans? Or you were the Swans?
I was there 1 year. And
Really?
I got an offer.
Of course you got an offer.
The Swans did really well. The start of the year they were getting 3,000 people at a game. We were getting 40. And Kappa, I went to Kappa and I said, mate, I want to make you the star of the team. So I said, okay. So I put him in the tightest shorts we could possibly get him in. They were shrink wrapped. We did a survey around the schools and we gave all the schools photographs of the 20 players and said, who do you think's the sexiest, cutest, whatever? And Warwick got 95% of the votes.
Yeah.
And so I went up to him and I said, the only common denominator, well, first of all, Sydney Swans or Australian football in Sydney was as popular as syphilis. It was syphilis, Hitler, Swans. And so I said the only common denominator to all the kids, because we're not going to get the oldies because they're locked into South Sydney or whoever they're into. The only ones we can get are the up-and-coming ones. And the only common denominator is music.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to Warwick and I said, can you sing? I said, yeah, mate, I've sung a bit. I'm not sending him up. I love the guy. We went to his 60th birthday party a couple of years ago. Yeah. Had a great time. Flew in, especially. We released this song, Only Take What's Mine. And because it was a singing footballer and was Warwick and his tight shorts and all the rest of it, everybody played it. All the radio stations played it. All the sports programs played it. All the news programs played it. It got a hell of a lot of exposure. So we're getting 40,000 people. We were outdrawing every team in the rugby league combined, our audience for the Swans.
Really?
And I did a sponsorship deal. The average sponsorship was $650,000 a year. I got $3 million off Hoover. $3 million. Couldn't believe it.
Bloody hell.
Got $3 million. So at the end of the year, this guy comes to me and he says, you're the bloke from the Swans. I said, yeah. And he said, you've had a good season. I said, yeah. He said, have you thought about coming to America? And I said, no, not really. And he said, would you like to come? And I said, yeah, I guess. And he said, I own a team called the Los Angeles Raiders. You want to come and work for them? I said, yes.
Wow.
So, on a plane, got to the States, worked with the Raiders, big learning curve.
Yeah. Was it similar though? Like, no, just sport. That's the only similarity?
That's the only similarity. When I left Sydney, our budget was like $9 million. Got to the Raiders and their budget was like 200 million American or something. I mean, just the whole... At the Swans, we used to have to barter to get coffee.
Yeah.
Over there, they just buy old fucking coffee company.
Yeah.
It's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
And so I was with them for a couple of years, and then they decided that they'd go and move to Oakland. And I didn't want to go to Oakland. So I stayed in Los Angeles. I love Los Angeles. And I'm in Oakland, I'm in Los Angeles, and without a job again. Well, I'd accumulated a few dollars by this stage.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I'll go back to Australia. I haven't got any other prospects. The only problem with working with somebody like the Raiders is that I realised that after 2 years, everybody I knew was 6'8" and huge. And there's me. I look like a pimple on somebody's ass, what's this guy? And so I'm out of work, and then I get a call from representatives of Evander Holyfield, who was number 5 in the world boxer. And so I said, okay. So got involved with Evander, and he won the world title because Buster Douglas almost accidentally knocked out Tyson.
Yeah.
And so we got a title fight, and Evander became world champion. So now I'm working with the world champions. And it just sort of grew from there. Everything sort of...
Was it all around the marketing, Bob?
Yeah, pretty much.
Did you ever regret, well, I suppose you wouldn't, but like, because you've got so many strings to your bow, like, was entertainment still burning in you, like being a singer or anything like that?
Well, while I was doing all this, I was the chairman of the Australian Theatre Company in Los Angeles, which is all the actors and stuff. So I was chairman of that, and we put on plays and we did all sorts of promotions. And but I still go to concerts and sit there and look and think, oh, I wish it was me.
Yeah.
I still would love to do that.
Because somehow you got off stage and become the bloke that built the stage.
Yeah, anyway. So I got a call from Japan, from Dentsu, saying we need a big extravaganza. It was their 50th anniversary, 100th anniversary of something of a client, and we need a big tour for Asia. And it was just after the Olympic Games, and ice skating was the big thing because I think the Japanese ice skater won the gold medal. I said, okay, we'll put together an ice skating show. And and I didn't know anything about ice skating. I found the Centre for Ice Skating Advancement up in Lake Arrowhead, and I called them and said, look, I've got a contract to do this ice skating show in Japan and on tour. And could I talk to somebody? And I spoke to this lady, Janice Loveland, who I'd never heard of before, but she was managing all of Bob Hope's stuff. So she was working with Bob and Dolores Hope. And so I started working with her. We signed 34 Olympians to this ice skating spectacular, which she wrote, she produced. I just sat there on the phone, And so we put on this show. Katarina Witt and Robin Cousins were the two major ones. They'd both just won gold medals. And so we did the tour. It was a great success. Then Dentsu followed me up and said, can we put Panasonic in the Tour de France? So I put Panasonic in the Tour de France. So it was just stuff happened because of other stuff, Mm. And I get a call in 1995 from Australia saying that there was a tour being organised about small business, and would I be interested? Because I was the most successful Aussie business guy out there, out of the country. So I came over and we did a tour with Simon Reynolds, John McGrath, and a couple others. Anyway, we did 45 cities in 45 days around Australia.
Yikes.
Everyone sold out. It was fantastic. And we all got paid quite a lot of money.
Yeah.
No, we had no merchandise between us.
Yeah.
Anyway, so then I go back to the States and I get a call saying, we're going to do it again. It was such a big success. We're going to do the same 46 cities, same 46 days, but this time we're going to have merchandise. So you've got 3 months or whatever it was to put together some tapes, some books, some whatever. So I wrote my first book. First book was published, did well, got picked up by a number of universities around the world and whatever. And we came over, we did another 46 shows. This time we had merchandise. And we sold a shed load. All these small businesses that are struggling all sort of flocked in. I think we sold 180,000 tickets or something. It was some incredible amount. And then I went back to the States and I got a call from Microsoft saying, would you like to come up and give a speech? So I went up to Microsoft, gave a speech. I was a little different than everybody else because, the story that you hear from everybody is the most important things are your product, your price, your awareness and customer satisfaction. Well, I argued that none of those four things are worth a squirt. They're useless. If you sell based on product, there's a million people got the same product you have, and some of them can probably produce it cheaper. Price is important. You go to a car park, how many Skodas do you see? None. They're all driving BMWs and Mercedes. If price was important, they'd be driving Skodas. So forget price. Customer satisfaction if I go and buy something, I'm entitled to be satisfied.
Hmm.
So I'm not going to come back because I'm satisfied. I'm going to come back because you knocked my socks off. And if you don't, I'm coming back. I'll buy the same shit down the road. And the other one was brand awareness. That's a bunch of bullshit too. Because, and I gave the example in my speeches where I say, if I walk down the main street of the Gold Coast in nothing but a sequin jockstrap, would I get on the news? Absolutely. Would I be on the front page of the papers tomorrow? Absolutely. Would I have great brand awareness? Absolutely. Would any bastard buy anything off me? No way.
Yeah.
You know? So none of those things are important.
Yeah.
So anyway, I got lucky again in that I get a call from a guy, Lee Tomlinson, who is the head of the American Film Institute. And he says, all the film companies are getting together for the very first time in their history to promote 100 years of making American movies. 100 years, 100 movies. And we want you to pitch for it. And he said, it's big. It's a $100 million deal. Yeah. By this time, Janice had joined me in the company. And she said, we can't compete with the big guys. They'll go and do big extravaganzas and have orchestras and whatever, and we're not going to be able to compete. So we didn't put in a bid. And then Lee Tomlinson rang me and said, you guys haven't bid. I said, no, we just can't compete. And he said, what you probably don't know is that because all the studios are involved, anybody that's worked with the studios in a marketing capacity is not allowed to be in it, because otherwise you get influence, And so we're looking for people that haven't been involved in the industry. So we want you to put in a bid. So we just put in a really simple one-page thing saying top 100 movies of all time, voted by the top 100 directors, top 100 producers, top 100 whatevers. And bugger me dead, we get a call saying, you've got the gig.
Wow.
So we worked on 100 years of movies. It was fantastic. And it's hard. Once you get into that situation, it's hard to lose, because the board we were reporting to was Spielberg, Cruise, all those people. I mean, it's impossible to fail. I gave it my best shot, though. No, it went really well. And then because of that, I won the International Marketer of the Year, which I should have won for other things rather than that one, but I'll take it from anybody. And then I started speaking, started getting speaking offers and things because I was getting sort of known. And Janice said to me, I started speaking in 1995 or 6 or something, 7, and I was charging $3,000 a speech. And Janice said to me, we got to double it. And I said, if you fucking double it, I won't get any work, So we put it up to 6 and stayed at 6 for about 3 months or something. And Janice said, we're going to put it up to 10. And I said, you're trying to kill me, And we put it up to 10, got more work.
Yeah.
Put it up to 15, got more work.
Yeah.
Put it up to 20, got more work. And these are US dollars. And instead of one airfare, we want 2 airfares. Instead of one night, we want 4 nights and all that stuff. And we got more work. And then Janice explained, it's like a pyramid. At the bottom, there's 50,000 speakers at $3,000. Up the top, there's 20 of you, 20 grand or more.
Yep.
So we're getting up into the rarefied atmosphere. And I was a bit different, and I was one of those speakers that jumped on and off the stage, jumped on tables, yelled at people and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Which nobody else was doing. Everybody else was standing behind.
Well, you still do it now.
Yeah, I try. That's what I love about I get to get out there in front of all those people and
trust me, he still does it now
and do whatever I want. And so that that went great, and I ended up doing 2,100 speeches. 2,100 speeches. It's a lot of speeches. 2 things in Vegas that I remember well. First time, I was on stage at the Venetian. About 5,000 people had a heart attack right in the middle of the speech. I remember that because they didn't pay me. And then the second thing I remember was I'm giving a speech, and a guy comes up to me afterwards and he says, have you thought about doing radio? And I said, I've never done radio. I've got no clue. And he said, would you be willing to give it a go? So I said, yeah, okay. So we met and we worked out the deal and whatever. And he said, we'll give you 13 weeks trial. The only problem is it's got to be live from wherever you are, which is a real pain in the neck because I broadcast from all over the world. Because I was giving speeches and I'd do the radio show in conjunction, but it had to be live. So one show I was doing it live from the Kremlin. So I was in the Kremlin giving a speech, giving the radio show, and it's like 2:30 in the morning. I'm the only bastard there apart from a few security guards. Yeah. And that was a real problem because it got to be a real drag and it had to be on a hard line. I couldn't, so. But I did it for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So I did 10 years of radio in America, and that was fantastic. And now I'm back on it again. We're on 94.1 Golden FM, and we've got a show, Go Set Show, and it's going to be great.
I've got to say something I think we missed. We might have brushed over it, but you're also an award-winning author.
Yeah, I put out the first book because I had to. Well, I didn't have to, but it was a way to make an easy buck on that big round of speeches. I knew if we got 180,000 people and one in every 10 bought a book, it's good money. So I did the first one. It did really well and it got accepted by a number of universities. So I did a second one pretty quickly and that did well. And then I did a third one, which did well. And then my fourth book or fifth book, I can't remember now, happened at the same time I got the radio show. So every week for 10 years, I flogged the shit out of this book. So I sold, instead of selling 5,000 copies, I sold 120,000 copies.
Yep.
Still a good book. And I because of all the people that I'd met, I had some great testimonials all over the book, of course. I had Tim Draper, who was the biggest venture capitalist in the world, who put billions into all of Elon Musk's stuff, and he got to be a good friend of mine because he was on the radio show all the time. The marketing director for Real Madrid gave me big raves. The head of I think it's the World Real Estate Organization gave me big raves, and somebody else I can't remember, but somebody big. Edwin Besant, who's the head of I think the biggest pharmaceutical distribution company in the world. He gave me big raves and all over the book. You can't miss it. And so that was great. And then everything was going along swimmingly. I was speaking. I had the radio show, and then COVID happened, so that slowed it down. And then I met my seventh wife, and that slowed it down even more because she said, enough of this, you're 80 years old. So I stopped everything, but I really missed being involved. I missed, and then we ended up coming to Australia, which we didn't intend to do. We had a beautiful home in Hollywood Hills, floor to ceiling glass all the way around. You walk into the lounge room and there's the Hollywood sign. We had, who do we have up the road from us, Mighty Mouse? Oh, we had Brad Pitt 5 doors up and we had Johnny Depp opposite.
But, when you think about it, you're on the Gold Coast now and you're only, 20 minutes from Lindsay Waddington. Like, life's looking pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it just gets better and better. And so we were talking after we got married, and I said, look, I've got this place in Sydney right on the water. And she said, oh, great, what do you do with it? I said, I don't do anything, it just sits empty. She said, what's the matter with you? So why don't we go and sell it and bring the money back to the States? So we came over, we sold it in about 5 minutes, $3.5 million. So I thought, this is great, take it back to the States. Within 24 hours, I got a notice from the tax department, 1.75 million in tax. We had to flip it. We came up here, I was a guest at Go Set at their lunch, and we came up here, everybody had places on the water. So we walked into the very first estate agent we saw. Didn't do any inquiries, didn't do anything. Just walked into the first real estate agent and said, we got $3.5 million to spend. We want to spend it today because we're leaving. And they said, have we got a deal for you? Just so happens that somebody came in this morning, got a house right on the water, $3.5 million. It's got your name written all over it.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, cool enough. So we bought it.
Yeah. Nice.
And
probably good going because everything's gone up so much. It'd be double that now.
it's a beautiful house. I mean, it's really cool.
Yeah.
And,
he leaves the key under the pot plant out the front. Oh, anyway, no.
And anyway, so at the same time, Mighty Mouse decided that she didn't want to be in Los Angeles anymore. I love Los Angeles because we go to theatre. We go to the theatre all the time. We go to concerts all the time. I've been to concerts for just about everybody there's ever been. And she didn't want to be there anymore. Too much crime, too much drugs. And so too much graffiti, too much traffic. And so we bought a place in Palm Springs. So now we've got the place in Palm Springs, which is beautiful. But it's in Palm Springs.
Yeah.
So it's a long way away from what I'm used to, 100 yards to the Hollywood Bowl, 200 yards to the Greek, 150 yards to the Pantages and all those sorts of things, and just spontaneous, let's go tonight and see.
Yeah.
And now you've got to get a plane.
It's actually an effort.
LA or sit into traffic for 4 hours to get to LA. Then you've got to get a hotel room and you've got to, it's a schlep. So, and that's the same problem with here. I mean, we were used to going to concerts constantly. Now the closest you get to a concert here or in Palm Springs is to watch it on YouTube.
I tell you what, though, your life, like I said at the start of this, it's so bloody interesting. The people, the things you've done, mate. And like you said, you've probably just followed doors opening and made good of them, which you've got to have the nous to do that too. But your siblings and your mum and that must have been looking, look at that boy go.
Like, it's actually not quite like that at all because
isn't it?
My mother kept saying to me, and while I was doing commotion, I was doing a Bachelor of Science. So I get to be a chemist and I get a job at ICI as a chemist. I've got a TV thing happening.
Yeah.
I got a job at ICI. And I went in there on the Monday morning, put my lab coat on, worked in the lab, got to Friday, and I walked into the boss and I said, I quit. I'm out of here. This is not my idea of living. I'm gone. So my mother was horrified because I was the first person in the family. They'd come from a pretty poor background. I was the first person in the family to get a qualification or to do anything. So she was furious. She was livid. And she never encouraged me. She encouraged me while I was running around getting knocked back from everybody. But once it started to catch on and started to be a little bit successful, she had sort of two sides to it because she'd say to me, it's a waste of time. There's no future in the entertainment business. You're not Elvis Presley or you're not. But she'd say that to me. And yet at the same time, I'd have people say to me, oh, you're on Homicide tonight. Your mother rang me and she said, she told us to, look, watch it. So on one side, she was sort of proud of me. And on the other side, she was worried that I was throwing my life away.
Yeah.
But it's an easy decision to make. I think as a chemist, I was making like $20 a week or something back in 60, whatever it was. I think I was getting only about 35 quid in those days from commotion. But then I was earning a couple of hundred with dances and modelling and all that sort of stuff. So, I was earning 10 times what I would have been as a chemist. Most of the people that I know that are successful, and I was fortunate to get into a group or get invited into a group in America called METAL, Media Entertainment Technology Alpha Leaders. It's only 2,000 people, hand-selected, which meet every week. All the people that are available meet every week. And I was fortunate to be invited to that, I think because of the radio show and because of a couple of other things that I'd done. And I met 2,000 people that were extremely successful. And I think the common thread probably is that it's lucky that these opportunities open up. But the more you're out there and the harder you push the envelope, and I've always been a great self-promoter. One of the most important things I was told when I just started, I think, on commotion was somebody on a plane, and somebody said to me, make sure you get a publicist and keep your name out in front of the public. So I had a publicist when I was on commotion, which took half my money, but it made sure that you're in the paper all the time. People noticed you. There was, I've had two.
You're always relevant.
Yeah, I've had 2 60 minutes done on me years ago, but all those things, people notice it. I'm sure the only reason I got the call from the Packer Group was because they'd heard my name and they'd seen it out there. And I'm great at telling people who I am, and if I get a gig, I'll tell everybody.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. And because people know who you are and you've got some sort of a success story, doors open. And then you've got to be game enough to say, okay, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
When the American thing came up, I had the Swans. I could have stayed with the Swans and made a lot of money, but I had the opportunity to go to America. And so without knowing anybody there, really, not having the sort of money that you need to America.
It might be a hard question because you've dealt with so many big, powerful people.
I don't answer hard questions.
Oh,
soften it up.
No, you'll be able to do it, I'm telling you. Who's somebody in all of your journeys, all your works, like we're talking many things, author, acting, singing, marketing, managing, all this, who's somebody that you really admire, and if you could click your fingers, you'd be having a beer with them now?
That is a really difficult question. I've met so many incredible people. This might sound, this is probably not what you're expecting, but probably Harry Miller, because he really got me out of the little league in that we had Pritchard Miller Productions, and he opened the doors. I mean, he had Graham Kennedy, he had Maggie Tabber, he had all those people.
That's great.
And so I sort of stumbled in, and then he negotiated the deal with Westech, which actually put me on the map. And so I think Harry had a huge amount to do with my development. Janice Loveland, she was the head of the Academy of Country Music, and she was what else did she had? She had a couple of really major things before she joined Bob and Dolores Hope, which isn't a bad gig either.
Yeah.
And she changed my life by pushing my fees up. We doubled them and doubled them and doubled them and doubled them.
Showing him what your worth is, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know whether it's what you're worth. I think it's about standing out from the crowd. It's about, I think that the problem, I think why I got them was that most speakers go out and stand behind a microphone, walk up the stage, walk across the stage, walk down the front, ask a couple of questions, where I would run up and down and I'd run through the crowd, and I had this great routine about Disneyland, and I used to run up and down the aisles and jump on tables and stand on chairs and yell at people, and you're different, and I think it's about being different. If I had my time over again and could be anybody, I'd be me.
Yeah.
I have had a fantastic career.
That's such great advice.
It's been remarkable. And, I did a pilot for a television show a few years ago called Dreams of Ordinary Men, which wouldn't fly today because you'd have to change men to whatever. But it was about taking people who started with nothing and became successful. And we did the pilot. It got to air, but it didn't get picked up. At the end of that episode, they took me back to Richmond to the apartment where we grew up. And it was as big as that home theatre that you've got there. I love that.
Good on you.
I love that little home theatre.
Oh, it's just one little lounge chair in the corner.
And, I went back there and I thought, geez, you've really done all right. Really. And I think it's imposter syndrome. I haven't done anything better than anybody else could have done. It's just I've had the opportunity to do it.
And what I'm getting from you is like, I've been a funny one, like being a cane farmer's son. Left school at 15, so bombed out of school. I only went to eat my lunch there. I didn't really do much else. But my motto was, if there was something I wanted to do, jump in the water and then swim like hell.
Yeah, but if
And just work, just work it out.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I agree. My first meeting with Packer, when he was explaining to me World Series cricket and what we had to do, I walked out of there thinking, shit, I'm going to last in this job a week. I don't get anything. And I was too scared to say to him, "What? Could you explain that to me?"
You were supposed to know it all.
I'm supposed to know. So I was never big at asking, but I was good at sort of getting in and trying to kick the shit out of it as hard as I could. Hopefully it'll work, and it worked. So if I was going to come back and be anybody, it'd be me.
Good on you, mate. Got any good advice out there for any young'uns starting off in any, because you've been across so many genres, like what's some good advice to give somebody starting off?
I think the first thing is you've got to love what you're doing.
Yep.
You've got to really enjoy it. You've got to be not afraid to bite the bullet. If it seems impossible, just try harder. You can't get anywhere unless you're willing to really push the envelope. If you're going to sit back and just go with the flow, you're going to end up going with the flow.
Well, you found 12 million in 5 days.
Yeah, that was lucky. Alan, thank you. I loved him.
Yeah,
he was great. And Red was fantastic too.
Yeah.
They were a great couple.
Well, I got to tell you, I reckon we will do another one of these podcasts and a chat later on. This bloke's a great fella. We've been very lucky to have him come into our life through music, through the Brian Cadds and Russell Morrises and projects. Love his story. Love what he's all about. Great bloke. Thanks, Bob Pritchard, for coming along today, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Mate, that's spectacular.